Hey, it's Don. We're going to have a look at Dark Souls for millennial dads. Um, a lot of people know Dark Souls very well, and some people won't. Perhaps you're a millennial dad like I am, and maybe you've heard of Dark Souls from somewhere else, or you've thought about it, or tried it, and the prospect of it is a little daunting. It's a fairly straightforward game underneath all of the nonsense. And obviously it has its reputation, but it's not as bad as you'd think. And some of the mechanics in it, whilst they seem a little bit oppressive, are only really as bad as anything else with a checkpoint system, or anything, where you might die and have to redo all the work you did, or even Doom or or Wolfenstein or one of those older games. When you die, you have to go back to the start, and this is much more forgiving than that. So, lesson one would be fearless. So we're going to start a new game. Just going through just deleted all my old saves, and now it's kicked me into the options menu, which is cool. We're going to have subtitles on because I like that. Toggle auto lock on, I find useful. Some people don't find it useful. That's up to them. Camera auto wall recovery, I set to off. That's essentially what the camera does when you get backed into a corner. If it's on yes, what it'll do is it'll flip the camera to somewhere else. It can be quite disorientating if you're in the middle of a fight, and so instead with it off, what it'll do is it'll just occlude whatever it has to make sure the camera angle stays the same. So we'll keep that. Show blood is on because whatever. X and Y can stay where they are because that's how I've learned it and that's how it is. UI scale is going to be what it is. Music, sounds, voice all going to stay the same. We're going to keep the buttons as per defaults. We're playing on Xbox, so you'll see A, B, X, and Y instead of triangle, circle, or tab or whatever. But doesn't make a big difference. So this is on a controller. If you were to play on PC with a controller, these are things you'll have. So we'll do our character creation. I'm playing in offline mode at the moment for a couple of reasons, but primarily so that we've got plenty of room to do whatever we want. So first major choice of the game is what are we going to go for. So there are a few options. The first three are kind of vanilla combat, strength-based, tanky builds. Then the next ones are more dex-based. So these top ones are your heavy weapons, especially warrior knight. Heavy weapons, high equipment load, generally a lower speed that you're going to be aiming for late game. Thief, bandit, and hunter are a little quicker. They use dex-based weapons. You'll see on the dexterity on the left of the screen where we've got our stats. So these all start at slightly different levels. Doesn't really mean much. It just means that they've got more or less attributed to them. Doesn't really affect anything in game except the amount of souls it takes to level the first couple of levels. So warrior and knight are fairly heavy. Wanderer and thief are fairly light. Bandit is a mix of both. He's light but has heavy weapons. Hunter is fairly light and has a lot of resistances and stuff. Sorcerer is your vanilla mage build, which fires sorceries. And the sorceries are generally offensive but sometimes utility spells. They all require a certain amount of levels and effort put into tuning all of those. It's not just something you can equip loads and loads of. You have to make a lot of choices there. Pyromancer is a similar class, but he has some points dropped into his strength. So he comes armed with a sick looking woodsman's axe and a fairly ropey looking shield, rather than the sorcerer comes with a nice shield and a nice dagger. Pyromancer's cool because the pyromancies, which are a type of spell, are not a sorcery, so they don't require levels, they just require attunement stats. So you don't need to put a lot of effort into improving magic casting, but you do need an item to do it, and you can level up that item as it goes through. Cleric is similar, but also the opposite, so he's quite high strength. He comes with a big whacking mace, a decent wooden shield, and his miracles, or spells, so he casts healing miracles, and there are a few offensive miracles, but mostly they're healing or defensive. Pyromancer is a bit of a mix and match. Most of the ones we'll be using are offensive. A couple of them have some decent utility that will make them a lot more offensive. And lastly, the last one is the Deprived, and he gets a club and a wooden shield with no clothing. You can see his stats are 11 across the board, whereas some of these are a little more or a little less in some of these. Deprived's kind of like the hardcore class, I guess you call it. It's the one that appeals the least at the beginning because you come with the least equipment, but at the same time he's probably the one that's most easily led into a particular type of build, and since we probably won't be using the armor that we'll normally start with, he's not a bad choice. What we'll do though, this is the Millennial Dad run, so we're going to go for the Pyromancer because we like to have a bit of ranged, and we'll like to have the utility of having the Pyromancy flame from the start, just so we've got a bit of ranged on us, and we've still got our axe for our combat. The Gift is next, and that's where we get to start with a little bonus equipment. We can start with nothing. We can start with a Goddess's Blessing, which manifests itself as a handful of blessed water vials that you can use to refill your HP all the way up to the top, which is great. Single use items though, so when you use them they're gone. Black Fire Bombs, similar one-time use things. You get 5, I think, of these. They cause quite a lot of damage to certain types of enemies, but again, when they're gone, they're gone. Twin Humanities, it doesn't tell you what that is at the beginning of the game, which is annoying. It's got quite a lot of uses for us though, we might take that one. Binoculars are great if you want to run a ranged character, if you want to use a bow, or you want to use a sorcerer with the soul arrows. Those are quite good. They're not a lot of use to us as a pyromancer. Pendant does nothing. The Master Key opens a lot of doors, especially in the early game, that we can use to sequence break. We won't be sequence breaking this time because we'll run this kind of like a bit of a walkthrough. We'll do a bunch of different... the plan for this one is that we'll do a continuous playthrough all the way through the game. The Tiny Beans Ring gives us a little bit of HP, and the Old Witch's Ring has no obvious effect, but what it actually does is it lets us talk to a spider lady later on. Is it that useful? Not particularly. So I think we're going to take the Black Fire Bombs because they're useful to have. We're going to go for the Millennial Dad build. Let's not kid ourselves. We're going to use the basics for this because it doesn't matter to us what we look like, and you hardly kind of interact with anything to the point where it's, in my opinion at least, it doesn't matter what you look like, so I'll just look like that, that's fine. And we'll confirm the character, and we'll start the game with the character. We'll get a cutscene, which is the sickest cutscene in the world, to describe what it is. There's a lot of lore dumped in this cutscene, and a lot of it just describes the world that we're going into, and explains how we end up in the position we are.
Age of ancients, the world was unformed, shrouded by fog. A land of grey crags, arch trees, and everlasting dragons. But then there was fire, and with fire came disparity. Heat and cold, life and death, and of course, light and dark. Then from the dark they came and found the souls of lords within the flame. The first of the dead. The Witch of Izalith and her daughters of Chaos. Gwyn, the Lord of Sunlight, and his faithful knights. And the furtive pygmy, so easily forgotten. With the strength of lords, they challenged the dragons. Gwyn's mighty lords glued upon their stone spears. Witches weaved great firestorms. Nito unleashed a miasma of death and disease. And Seath the Scales betrayed his own, and the dragons were no more. Thus began the Age of Fire. But soon the flames will fade, and only dark will remain. Even now, there are only embers, and man sees not light, but only endless nights. And amongst the living are seen carriers of the accursed dark sign.
Yes, indeed.
Yes, indeed. The dark sign brands the undead. And in this land, the undead are corralled and led to the north. Where they are locked away to await the end of the world. This is your fate.
Alright, so here we are in the Undead Asylum. This is our guy. We are now undead. Outside of a hole in the ceiling and a thing on the floor, we don't know what we're doing. So, basic controls. We use the left stick to move, right stick to change our camera angle. Easy peasy. One of the quirks of Dark Souls is when you get a little prompt on the screen, it doesn't go away until you've done something about it. So it doesn't kind of fade on its own, and a lot of newer players who are used to older games where things would just time out will experience some difficulty with that. We should also mention that when we pause the game isn't paused. It carries on. The world exists without us interacting with it particularly, which is I can see why they do it. It's a little bit annoying, especially when you run it the first time. Awful to get used to. So let's pillage this corpse. Dungeon cell key. Now you'll notice it says A for OK. So what I'd do is if I came up to here, I'd be like, oh no, I've got a dungeon cell key dialogue box open here. So we can open it or toggle it, obviously. But what we don't want to do is sit around with that all day. So we will just tell it to OK. Then we've got some messages on the ground. These are dev messages to give you some very basic tutorials. We're not that interested in them, but they are there. We're in the Undead Asylum, which is where the undead are corralled. We're in the north. We know that. But we don't really know anything much about who we are or why we're here, other than we are undead and we've been given a key to escape. These guys we can't really interact with particularly. We could attack them and kill them. We can lock onto them by using the right stick, flicking it in, and our character will face towards them until we click it again to turn it off. It's a useful thing to know. We get out of here, climb this ladder. And very carefully, so we don't fall back down, go through here and visit the first bonfire. Bonfire does two things. One is we will respawn here if we're killed. For the time being though, we actually need to rest at the bonfire to actually respawn here. And what that'll do is it'll respawn all of the enemies that we've killed, with some exceptions. And it'll essentially reset some of the progress that we've made in the world, but also not reset any of the real kind of tangible process. What Dark Souls does is whenever you die, you respawn at these bonfires and you have to go and collect your souls, which is the currency of the game. And with that, the bonfires are kind of an integral part. So if we don't rest at the bonfire, we won't respawn at that bonfire. Now, what are we doing in here? We are looking for this big guy up here. We can see him. When we get into the room, he's going to drop down and it's going to start to scare us. Now, what this is kind of the tutorial boss. We can see in the corner there that we've got a very well lit door that appears closed at the moment, but when he jumps down, it will open. I wonder if we can get that on camera. It'll jump any second now. Oh, there it is opening, and there it is jumping. Now what we'll do is we'll do what everybody does, which is run up and start attacking him, find out that he whacks really, really hard, and then we do almost no damage to him. So once we know that we do no damage to him, we're going to run away from him. We're going to run through that door that opened. Now I've got the black fire bombs. We could have killed him if we wanted to. With the black fire bombs we get a different reward, and it changes some of the things that we do in there. We get his club, which is sick, but we still have to go through the rest of the level to get the key that he would normally drop, because that's going to be dropped by somebody else if we do that. We're not going to do that. We're going to do it the as intended noob way. So we'll light this bonfire. Notice in the top left hand corner we've got a status bar, or a status bar if you will. The red is our health, the green is our stamina, and the zeros is our humanity count. We'll come back to humanity count later. We don't need to worry about it for now. But health is important. You see that when we sat at the bonfire, our health refilled. And you can see that everything we do uses stamina. So if we roll, it uses stamina. If we sprint, it uses stamina. If we attack, it uses stamina. And if we do our defensive things, it does use stamina as well. So first things first, we're going to learn about archers. The archers are not designed really to hit you at this point. I mean, obviously they will hit you if you stand still long enough for it. You see the how long that arrow actually takes to come and get us. It's got a bit of a curve to it. What are we going to do? Ah, what? Come on, man. Anyway, we'll pillage the corpse. We've got the shield. And it's given us this vestibule to come into. So, this is where we talk about the other part of the UI, which is the bottom left, where we've got fireball, we've got a blank space, we've got a broken sword, and a black firebomb. That's our equipment slots. Now what we can do is we can come into change equipment in our menu, and we can choose what equipment is going into each of those. So this is the top row, which is our firebombs, etc. So that scrolls through these. We've only got the one thing in there at the moment. This is our right hand. This is our left hand. We picked up a shield. We can put that in our left hand, and then we can see that on the equipment on the bottom left, we've got a shield in there. The shield can do two things. It can block, and it can parry. And the parry is one of the ways that we can avoid damage. Blocking is the other way we can avoid damage. Very handy. Not always kind of consistent or useful for some things. Okay, he ran away. Now we've got our axe. So let's go in there and we'll change our axe. Now we could put it on our other slot on our right hand. We've got two slots on each. But we're going to replace the straight sword hilt with the hand axe. Each of these has their own stats, as you can see. The straight sword hilt does 20 normal damage, no magic damage, no fire damage, and no holy damage. It has 200 in its durability, which is the health of the weapon itself, and it has 1 for its weight. The hand axe has 80 normal damage, no magic effects on there, a little bit more item health, durability 250, and it weighs twice as much. It's a 2. Oh, this guy's coming back. We're going to whack him, and the hand axe does loads of damage. Well, loads comparatively to what we're doing. So the hand axe has got a couple of attacks. This is the plain attack, the right bumper. With the right trigger, we can do a heavier attack, which is about the same. You'll notice he staggers with that because we didn't really hit anything, but if we hit a person or a monster, then he wouldn't stagger through that. And we can also do, if we time it right, by pressing forwards and pressing right bumper. If I can do it, I can never bloody do it. There we go. We do a kick, or if I can time it, we can also do a jump attack. He says, because he fails to do the jump attack. There we go. Now, hitting all those walls will have done us hand axe some damage, so we can have a look and see what the status of this is. Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Not bloody saying, because I'm in the wrong thing. So it hasn't actually done it any damage yet, which is great. We'll walk through the white light. Terrifying for a first time. We're going to choose to have a look around. So nothing there. We've got a guy who looks like the guy who drops us the key. Nice guy. Very positive. We'll have a look this way. We can see an item at the top of these stairs, but we can't seem to get up there. And also down here is just blank. So we'll move round to the other side. There's a fairly ropey looking wall there. There is a door that'll let us back out into this courtyard if we open it. Now that door will remain open if we die. We shouldn't die, but we might do. And so if we die, we'll respawn at that bonfire. We'll now be able to come up here. We've created a shortcut to come back through here. Now, at the top of the stairs is one of the things Dark Souls does quite well. It's got traps in it. And there are a couple of boulder traps throughout Dark Souls at the top of the stairs. We'll just get out of the way because that will do us some damage. But it's opened up this ropey looking wall. And now we can get it to this guy.
Oh, you. Thank goodness. I'm done for, I'm afraid. I'll die soon, then lose my sanity. I wish to ask something of you. You and I, we're both undead. Hear me out, will you?
We'll hear him out. Why not, mate?
Effectively, I have failed in my mission, but perhaps you can keep the torch lit. There is an old saying in my family: "Thou who art undead art chosen, and thine exodus from the undead asylum maketh pilgrimage to the land of ancient lords. When thou ringeth the bell of awakening, the fate of the undead thou shalt know." Well, now you know.
It's an unusual thing for a
And I
family
can
motto.
with hope in my heart. Oh, one more thing. Here, take this. An Estus flask. An undead favorite.
Right, Estus flask.
And this. Now I must
Silent
bid
key,
farewell.
F2.
I would hate to harm you after death. So go now, and thank you.
Okay, so Estus flask automatically equips. Unlike every other item in the game, it automatically equips, and we can change our equipped item by pressing down on our D-pad. We can switch between the fire bombs and the Estus flask. The Estus flask gives us healing. Now, the only downside of the Estus flask is its limited use. We reset its uses through bonfires, and we can't move while we're taking it. So we've got to be somewhere that's safe enough to take our Estus flask. But other than that, it's our kind of primary healing resource. There are a couple other ways to heal. There are some consumables we can take that'll bump that up. We don't have access to them at the moment, and they're fairly rare in game. And there's also healing miracles that the cleric starts with, and that we could spec into if necessary. Pyromancy flame, excellent. So we could spec into those if we wanted to. We're probably not going to because we've got limited spell slots. We picked up a pyromancy flame as well, so we're going to put that in our left hand. Pyromancy flame is what we need to cast this fireball. So if we notice at the moment, there's no way for us to cast the fireball. It's grayed out or darkened out. But if we switch with the left button on the D-pad to the pyromancy flame, now all of a sudden we've got this flaming hand, which looks sick as hell, and we can also cast the fireball. The fireball does tons of damage, especially to these early enemies. We'll not use it on these, but we'll talk about damage reduction. There's a few things we can do to reduce damage. First off is moving out the way of the enemy's swinging attacks. Second off, we can block. Blocking uses stamina. With the right shield, we can also parry, which sets us up for a riposte, which will do us loads of extra damage. As you can see, that uses stamina, as does the block. And the other way we can avoid damage is by rolling. Rolling is the most consistent form of damage reduction because it doesn't rely on our enemy type to perform. So what does happen is we can only parry humanoid enemies. Like this guy, because he's a skeleton. Which is great, but we can roll against anything. When we roll, we get some invincibility frames as we go into it. We can't be damaged by almost anything in that roll. So, in my opinion, it's one of the more effective skills to know. The problem is it uses quite a bit of stamina compared to using the parry or the block. So you've got to really know what you're doing with it, or at least be comfortable with not spamming it, because we can get about 3 rolls before we run out of stamina. Let's test that. So with the Pyromancer starting stamina, we get 1, 2, 3, 4 rolls before we run out of stamina. But once we've run out of stamina, it means we're not going to be doing any more rolling or attacking. And also, if we run out of stamina while we're blocking, we'll end up staggering or getting thrown backwards, depending on how hard we get hit. The other thing is, if we press the roll while we're standing still, we'll do a backstep. We also get some invincibility frames on that. We're quite handy if you're locked onto enemies and you just need to get out of their way quickly. Now let's get back into this hall. This tells us to press right bumper when we're falling to do a plunging attack. Now that'll increase our damage quite considerably. And we're above this dude, so let's do our plunging attack. 279 damage compared to the 1 or 2 damage we were doing earlier. It's not forever though. So what we're going to do is we're probably going to roll out the way of these attacks as we can. And we're going to hit with the fireballs, see how much they do. 147 is not bad at all. But one of the things about Dark Souls is... one of the things is most of the enemies have a handful of different attack types that they can do. And so one of the things that you're doing with bosses, as well as avoiding attacks, is you're learning their patterns to avoid getting hit. Because the easiest way to avoid damage is to stop getting hit. Easy peasy. Now I've completed the game a couple of times at this point. The first time I tried, I was crying blood to get out of this room. Didn't click with me first time around. Didn't click with me for a long time. Until I was watching Dan Floyd's run through of this. So that's he's on Playframe at the moment, but he was doing it with extra credits at the time. With what's his face? James. Surname I can't remember. So Dan and James played through the first quarter of this, and then Dan continued it on his own for the rest of their playthrough. And I thought, if he was struggling with it at first, but I thought if he can do it, then so can I. And then I picked it up, and this is where we're going. So I suck at this. You will suck at this at first, but if you keep going, it's really not as bad as you think it would be. And so this...
Only in the ancient legends it is stated that one day an undead shall return.
So that's the end of the tutorial. Picked up by a junk.
Leave the undead asylum in pilgrimage to the land of the ancient lords. Lordran.
And so everything we're seeing here is kind of places we can go and will go. There's a lot of promise in this, It shows us places that we'll go and things that we'll see throughout these cutscenes. We don't get a lot of cutscenes. We get a few at the at most, but not all boss encounters. In Lordran, level up and kindle up bonfires. Okay. This one stays for a while. So we'll sit at the bonfire. Now you notice that this bonfire is a lot brighter and has more fire on it than the bonfire we had at the Undead Asylum. That's because this one's been upgraded, specifically this one, to have a larger flame. You can upgrade bonfires when you're human, and also once you've learned the right of kindling. We'll discuss that in the next episode. For now, we will probably call this a day. I'll catch you next time.